Hello everybody and welcome to this video. It's all going to be about the Tesla Model X and the ultimate buyer's guide. It's a distinctive car with its Falcon wing doors, up to 7 seats, towing capability. So there's a lot to cover in this video. But we're going to talk about the history, some of the options and variants over time. We're going to cover what you need to look out for, or the problems they can have. We're going to cover where you might want to buy the car from, and everything you need to know for the ultimate Tesla Model X buyer's guide. Okay, so there's lots of ground to cover in this video, but firstly, let's just tackle the subject of where you can buy your Tesla. Tesla themselves do sometimes have inventory stock, but not often. And I guess one of the main things, main disadvantages with Tesla, you don't get to see the car in advance. You're certainly buying blind and fairly anonymously. So if they have inventory stock that might suit, that might be the answer, but often people have to turn to other places, and I think this is where this guide will especially come in very useful. So secondly, you might be looking to buy privately. You won't be able to get finance with a private purchase, and the car probably won't be prepared to the highest standard. There's some good deals to be had, no doubt, but be very, very careful buying privately. And of course, you don't really have any rights should there be any issue with the car afterwards. So buying privately can work, but be careful. So lastly, I think there's buying from an independent dealer. Like ourselves, we're very much a Tesla specialist, and I've been buying and selling Teslas for years and been an owner, so I carry lots of experience. However, lots of dealers now have Teslas themselves, but usually they don't have a great deal of experience, and certainly not with the ownership side, you know, where to charge them and life with the car. We're fairly unique in that aspect. But if you're buying from a dealer, just make sure they're a professional company. They will need to have a full FCA credit license if you want finance. Are they registered with trading standards, for example, and audited and approved like we are? So you need to be a little bit careful. Try and buy from somewhere professional so that you've got a car that you know is going to be prepared well, a good honest car, and ideally with some support afterwards. A lot of our customers, it's their first step into electric vehicles and Teslas, and we've got a great deal of experience from living with a Tesla, which I think gives a real benefit. But we're going to put this video together to show you everything we think you should know when you're looking at a Tesla Model X. We've got another video I've already made for the Tesla Model S. We'll try and put a link up here somewhere, and we'll make one on the Model 3 soon. But for now, let's get into looking at the Tesla Model X and talk about how they've changed over the last few years. So externally, the Model X hasn't changed a great deal over the years. It's going to be mainly about the spec and trims and seats, which I'll talk to you about. But what versions are there? Well, they're all going to be Ds for dual motor, so it's going to be mainly about battery size. You're going to see an X75D, an X90D, actually there's a few X60Ds, but their 75D restricted to a 60 kilowatt hour pack that you can buy and unlock. But you then come to the 100Ds. You can get a P90D, a P100D. The P means performance for super fast. They're absolutely crazy fast, especially for the size of the car. And it's only when you come to the recent vehicles where they're badged as dual motors, or dual motors with a red line underneath, which means it's a dual motor performance. So they've changed a little bit with their badging and what they're called, but the bigger the battery, the further the range. How do those battery sizes translate to real world range? Well, let's get the elephant out of the room here. The bigger the battery, the further it goes. But what's advertised can be very different to what you can expect in the real world. So let's be honest about the ranges from my experience. There's a whole load of variables when it comes to real world range. But let's take the smallest one, the Tesla Model X 60D. Well, you can expect a range down to about 150 miles, being realistic. You can certainly make it go further, but you've got to expect a fairly limited range for that battery size. An X75D, 200 miles, an X90D, a little bit over 200 miles. An X100D then jumps a little bit. It's got a more usable capacity in the battery, so you can get the best part of about 250 miles out of one of those. Coming on to the latest versions of the dual motor cars, or long range as they're advertised, allegedly slightly more efficient. So you're getting up closer to the kind of 280, 290, best part of 300 mile range potentially out of one of those. There's a lot of variables. These are really rough figures, but I don't like people to buy an X60D and expect to be able to drive 220 miles. We have to be realistic. So the range on the Model X between 150 and 300 miles with a whole load of variables in between. So here's a little trick some sellers use. They get the car and the pictures of this display to show a really large mileage. 285 miles, it's not even fully charged. Well, that's because this car is switched to its rated display, what it could do in optimal conditions. When actually, if we switch now to its typical estimate, that's a much more realistic guide. However, when I'm driving a Tesla, I prefer to show percentage. A Model X is available as a 5, a 6 or a 7-seater. And then of the 7-seaters, there's two versions of that. There's the earlier 7-seaters and the later 7-seaters. So I was trying to explain those differences. But here, this is a 5-seater. Gives us loads of space under here because we don't have the extra third row of seats. There's all this storage space under here, as well as this space under here. Huge. The seats do fold down. They fold completely flat. And I've known people to even put a mattress in here and go camping. So you can see in this 5-seater, there's ample room for me to camp and lay out. In fact, there's even a camping mode on the cars. The seats fold flat, but one thing to look out for on all the folding seat cars is this little corner here. It usually leaves an exposed element, which if you weren't careful loading something in the boot, could easily catch this and tear. But the 5-seater gives you so much space inside, it's bigger than almost anything else. So in the 6 and 7-seaters, with the back seats up, it does obviously reduce the storage space in the boot here. But remember, there's that big storage bit underneath where you can easily fit a mark. And the Model X also has a massive front storage space. So if I open that, I can fit another mark in the front. This is the 6-seater, so 2 of the seats at the front, 2 in the middle, 2 in the back. Leaves you this big open space. Maybe the dog sits here. But in the back here, you just have to be aware it's a little bit more cozy. So I can get in. I wouldn't want to do the long journeys, but I can certainly get here, and certainly children would be quite happy. I've just about got enough headroom. So it's not too bad, it's reasonable, and with this gap it means I could actually spread my legs out into the middle a little bit as well. But with the 6 and 7-seaters, you lose that bit of storage space we had under the boot floor there on the 5-seater. The other main thing to consider is that if you've got a boot full of gear here and you hit the brakes, there's nothing to stop that coming through. And another thing to consider is that these seats do not fold flat. They can move forward like this and they tip. But if you want to get something large in the boot, you do not have fold-in seats. But on the plus side, if you have a baby seat here, it means you don't have to take the seat out to be able to get passengers in the back. So the 6-seaters have 4 Isofix seats. The 2 in the back have Isofix, and these 2 have Isofix as well. And then there's the 7-seater, of which this is one. So this is the earlier version of a 7-seater, which has the post seats like the 6-seater, but just with that extra seat in the middle. It means you do have to fold the seat like this to get in and out the back, whereas on the 6-seaters, children usually just go through the middle, to be honest. It's not too bad. Obviously there's less legroom to spread out down the middle gap. Now the 7-seaters did change. The newer cars actually have fixed seat bases here, and these seats can fold flat. But on the earlier 7s like this one, there's no folding option at all. So interior colours, a bit like the Model S really. This is an earlier version of the tan, the newer version which is non-leather of a slightly lighter shade. Then you have the white interior, a bold option, especially if you have children, but it lasts really well, and a wet wipe soon has those grubby fingerprints off. So some of the earlier cars also had perforated seats for cool air, but they actually took that away and it wasn't available, so it's kind of a rare option to see, and I think they're going to be bringing it back on the new ones again now, but it's quite a nice option to have. I like it, especially in the summer. And then there's 3 versions of a black seat interior. The earlier cars were black leather, and they took that away and it became their substitute leather material. Very good. And then lastly, there's the part textile interior. So these seats have cloth center sections, and they're actually quite popular and they tend to last really well. So I like them, but they're not all full leather. These are the standard wheels on the Model X, 20-inch slipstreams finished in silver, but you can also get these great big 22-inch alloys. They look good. Obviously they do have a little bit of a negative impact on the ride quality, but mainly they do affect the range. And I think on Model X the bigger wheels do make quite a bit of difference, and you can potentially lose about 20 miles to a full charge by having these bigger wheels that are just less aerodynamic. But a popular option is to take the standard 20-inch slipstreams and refinish them in satin black like the 22-inch wheels. So you get the look, but it doesn't affect the ride or the range. And we do a lot of these. It's really popular, and I think it does look great. All the UK Model X's have got the extra cameras, part of Autopilot 2. But remember, Autopilot is still something that had to be purchased. So you have to check, even though it has the cameras, if the autopilot system is actually bought and active on the car. So if I come into the menu here by pressing Controls, Software, you can check what version of autopilot the car has enabled on it. And just above that, additional vehicle information brings up another menu, just confirming some of the specification of that car. So the Falcon wing doors are, of course, one of the biggest talking points of a Model X. Now, some people think you have to have loads of space next to the car, but they are designed so that in quite a tight space like this, I could put my baby in or out of a baby seat without having to try and get through a door like this. And this is the space it needs. So as you can see, it doesn't need a great deal of space. That's the idea. It's a great idea, and it works really well. However, you've got to consider that if you park the car in a garage or an underground car park or multi-storey car park, due to the height it needs above the vehicle, might not always be able to open fully. This particular car has a tow bar fitment. Now, on the newer cars, it became standard. They all had it, but actually on cars before, must be 2019, it was an optional extra, so don't assume they all have it. It's a detachable tow bar, and actually they're capable of towing 2,250 kilograms, which is a lot, and they're very good at it. They've got loads of torque, they're very good tow cars, but you have to allow that it has a massive impact on the efficiency and the consumption. Broadly speaking, you might only get half the distance that you normally would to a charge. And when you go to a charger, you may have to detach a trailer to be able to park and plug in. So very capable, but more for short journeys really. I have known people do long European trips, but that takes a little bit of planning and effort. There's a few different trim options for the dashboard and the center console. This one has a glossy dark wood finish. This one is carbon fibre, and this one's gloss black. There's also another wood finish available, but I don't have one of those here right now. So the Model X has air suspension as standard, and it ranges from very low like this, so it's nice and easy to get in and out, to very high like this in case you're going off-road. What's quite interesting about the air suspension on Teslas is that if you set it to go high, it will actually remember that location, and next time you go there, it will lift itself back up again. The high setting is only available at slower speeds, but it's useful if you regularly go up a gravelly track or some huge speed bumps or something like that. It will remember where you lifted it last time. All the Model X have this really nice big panoramic windscreen that comes right up above my head, so when I'm driving along, I can see the stars. The charge port on the Model X is conveniently located here. Free supercharging. Now, we often see these cars advertised with free supercharging, but often wrongly so. The early cars, remember, they only came into the country at the beginning of 2017, and only really for the first couple of months were those cars available with free unlimited supercharging, which can transfer to the next owner. We always see cars advertised with free supercharging later in 2017 or even 2018. Now, that owner might have free supercharging, but it will not transfer to the next owner. Even the earliest cars, if it's been previously resold by Tesla, they removed the free supercharging rights, so check that very, very carefully. So whilst we're on the topic of chargers, I recommend one of these. It's a Ccs adapter, and it just enables the Type 2 port that the Tesla has to connect to a CCS rapid charger. Now that includes the newest Tesla V3 superchargers. They are CCS only, so there's some Tesla superchargers you will not be able to use unless you have one of these adapters. But this means you can also use one of the increasing number of rapid chargers from the likes of InstaVolt or Shell recharges. There's more and more, so it gives you some more options. Now, it doesn't make the car charge faster, so there's some superchargers where you have the Type 2 superchargers and some with the V3s. It won't charge faster because of it, it just gives you more options basically. Not too expensive, at the time of filming about £360 from Tesla, and I think it's money well spent, so just a recommendation. This bit is different on different cars. So a lot of the early cars had the gloss finish. This has the matte finish. This, like many of them, has the gloss back to the seats. But you can see one of the problems, they do very easily show marks. Okay, so that brings us on to what to look out for when you're buying a used car. What can go wrong? What can fail? is it expensive to fix? Well, we've got these power doors. Let's make sure they're working properly. So when you release the door, it should initially open and then provide free movement here. If it's notchy, doesn't open properly or doesn't close smoothly with the power soft close, then it may need checking. So most of the Model X have this fixed spoiler at the back here. However, there are P100Ds that have an active spoiler. So this mechanism here comes up and folds down. So just check that works properly. So with the Falcon wing doors, we don't actually have too many issues with those at all. Sometimes you can get a bit of a creak or squeak when they open. You want to check there's no water has come in. The main thing you do always get is this kind of rub in here, and it tends to rub through the paintwork. Now, unfortunately, they all seem to suffer with this. There's not a great deal that can be done. When it first started happening, Tesla said, well, we'll come up with a solution with that. And actually that turned out to be a sticker going over that. And then the sticker normally comes off. So when you see this, it's unfortunately just standard. They will all have it. The Model X is obviously usually a working family car, so it's not uncommon to have kids in the back here. So just check the seats are all in good condition, no tears and rips or anything like that. But they usually clean up really well. One of the really key things to check when you're looking at a Model X is the tyres. They can look absolutely fine around here, but they're very prone to wearing early on the inner edge. I think like a lot of the air suspension cars, the ride height will affect the camber of the wheel, and we see a lot where there's heavy wear on the inner edge. So get right underneath, have that checked, and make sure it's okay, because they're not cheap tyres. When you go for your test drive on your Model X, put your foot down hard between about 30 miles an hour and 50 miles an hour and feel for any vibration. You may feel quite a strong shuddering through the car, and that means it needs to have its drive shafts looked at. In the car, check the screen's responsive and that the main center screen here doesn't have a faint yellow border. It's not uncommon, and as some of the cars come out of warranty, that's something you need to pay for to be fixed. However, it's not very expensive. It's about £50, so actually quite a simple solution. Some cars have a premium interior package which gives them this HEPA bioweapon medical grade filter. If it doesn't have premium interior package, it doesn't have that. I must say though, I find it a bit annoying to use. I don't know if you can hear on the microphone, but when you push that, it increases the fan speed, increases the fan speed and the air pressure in the car to keep out the contaminants. So I find it's not something we use very often. So another option with the premium interior package is to have the automatic opening door. Now, it's kind of a cool function, but a lot of people end up turning that off. Imagine you're on a busy road and a cyclist comes along or something like that. But it's another thing that you get with premium interior package. They all look like they have front fog lights, but they don't. It's another thing that comes with that premium interior package. So on cars before, I think it was 2019, the high fidelity sound was an optional upgrade. It was standard on those later cars, but it was optional early on. If you come to the music menu, press settings, press options, I see here this one has Dolby sound. That means this one has high fidelity sound upgrade. These power doors are all pretty cool. You can control them from the screen, but just make sure they're all working properly. So again, it became standard on later cars, but on earlier cars, there was an option called Sub-Zero Weather Package. They all had heated front seats, but the Sub-Zero Weather Package gave you all the seats heated, plus heated element on the windscreen, plus a nice heated steering wheel. When you test drive the car, just make sure and listen out for any squeaking or creaking from the front suspension. The ball joints on the top wishbone are a little bit prone to seizing, and you'll hear that squeaking noise. Obviously, like any other car, they do need maintenance, and a problem like that can be rectified from an independent garage outside of Tesla, and so it doesn't need to be a particularly expensive problem, but it's something to bear in mind. Another thing down in this corner, these center caps, they often kind of corrode around the edges, but they're cheap and easy to replace. But have a good look at the brakes. Like any of the Teslas, the brakes often just don't get used very much. When you lift off the throttle, the motors slow the car, and brakes don't usually wear, but through lack of use, you may find that they can be a bit scored or corroded on the discs, and maybe even the calipers can start seizing. So have a look at the brakes, check that the discs are all nice and clean, evenly worn, and that when you drive and you brake hard, it feels like it's stopping evenly. We do recommend to anybody who drives electric cars really that now and then just push the brakes pretty hard when you have the chance coming off something like a motorway slip road, just to keep them all working and active and clean and functional. Like all modern cars, we have these daytime running lights. The Model S, they can fail in segments, but I've never had a problem with the Model X at all with its headlights. But the backlights, you do need to check for any moisture or misting inside. A little bit of misting is normal, but if you see condensation inside, the light will probably need changing. Just check this electric seat mechanism's working fine. Not a particularly common problem. I've only had it once, and one of the motors down here stopped working. So those are the main points to check for when you're looking at a used Tesla Model X. They're actually pretty good, not too many issues to look for, and on the earlier 90Ds and 75Ds, potentially with free supercharging as well. They're commonly family cars, so it's mainly checking the specification meets what you expect. Remember, they're different on the earlier cars to the newer and later cars, which are more inclusive. But I hope that's useful for now. We'll wrap things up. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on all of those, plus post lots of daily stories as well. So for now, we'll close things up. Thank you for watching. I hope that's been useful.